Schönen guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Die Überraschung, wie stets, erstmal Deutsch und dann in Englisch. Heute haben wir einen speziellen Gast bei uns, Severence MacLaughlin. Und wer der Musik kundig ist, der weiß natürlich, dass der Name MacLaughlin für eine Menge Action steht. Und natürlich auch für Carlos Santana, mit dem er zusammen Musik gemacht hat. Die Musik spielt heute bei uns im Bereich Artificial Intelligence und alles, was man damit Fantastisches machen kann. Severance, I just started to introduce you in German, like I always do, and I made with your fantastic name MacLaughlin and the other one which is coming up for the product names that and the company's name that MacLaughlin is a name. If you know Carlos Santana and you are used to the music, you have just ringing a bell. And the music today plays not only in the music, but especially in technology and opportunities, what one can do with the right assessment of the technology and the right utilization, such as artificial intelligence as a helping hand. Welcome to our show, Severance.
Well, Ralph and Marshall and Thomas, thank you for having me. I've been excited to be joining for the last couple of months, so thank you.
I'm curious,
which is good.
It's about time.
Yeah, I'm curious. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and what made you decide to found your company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's two of my favorite topics, myself and AI. I mean, like, why not?
I hope so.
You're so different from us.
But no, thank you, Ralph. And again, thank you for having me on. Team, I have been in the AI game for about 20 years, as you can see the gray hair there. And I started back in when we used to call this strategic analytics. So I had finished my PhD and moved back to the United States with a medical company. And then unfortunately they were funded by Lehman Brothers. And then after the crash, I didn't have a job. So I went to work for a consulting company. They were very nice to me and they let me start a little consulting team, which was me, called Strategic Analytics. So how do you use numbers and analytics and data to make better business decisions? And that evolved over time into data science and then eventually AI. You know, I had a stint at Cognizant as their global head of AI for healthcare and life sciences. And then Gemini came knocking on my door to headhunt me to oversee all the verticals for artificial intelligence for the Western Hemisphere. And they gave me a fancy title, Chief of Intelligence, which I thought was pretty cool. And so, you know, we did some really great work in verticals anywhere from, you know, healthcare and life sciences, but also consumer packaged goods, from Chile all the way up to Canada. And then Ralph and, you know, Thomas and Marshall, one day I got sick and tired of presenting slideware, right? You go to the client, you present the slides, and we can do this. We're going to charge you to build it and the R&D at the same time. And I thought, if I put my own money there and I made a product and it was tried and tested with a couple of prototypes, people would be more apt to buy it, right? And I think that's what industry is looking for. So I decided to go out on my own with Delorean, and we created 4 products, and we're now in market. So, you know, cross your fingers. Hopefully, we'll continue to do good things, and I think that appetite is there, right? When people see, oh, it's been done before, I'm not paying to build it. And then the other thing is that we have a business model, which is we call AI as a service. So instead of spending those large amount of dollars for systems integrators to do the R&D and build it for you, because we've already built it, you know, there's a small implementation fee, and then we charge you by the month, which, you know, people that use CRMs understand that. So,
yeah. First question. What are the 4 products with that famous name, which comes directly back to the future, DeLorean?
Yeah, I'm an 80s. I love 80s movies. So Back to the Future is one of my favorites. The other one, which I'm excited about, guys, is Ghostbusters #3 coming out in November. So maybe we'll have a product called Egon or something of that sort. So,
super. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have 4 products. 2 of them are sales, which we'll talk about a little bit more here. And then we have a medical AI, which is what we call a real-time medical AI that assists the provider or doctor or the insurance company to give the better care by using vast amounts of data. So in the United States, most of the data for healthcare is in the insurance companies, and it's unlocking that power. And then we have I call it the not sexy technology we call TAPE, Ticket Analysis Prediction Engine, which works on applications management and predicting those tickets and how do you resolve them faster. Again, not sexy, but is quite valuable to the enterprise to get their business back online or to get people working. But for today, there's 2 that one is, you can see me in the back, is the first product I ever developed, and that's what we call Customer Relations Management AI. So this product sits on top of any CRM platform, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, Sugar CRM, HubSpot, you name it, we integrate, and we take all of the structured and unstructured data out of that database, and we can predict if a deal will win or not. And if it won't win, where in the funnel will it die and why? And what's the next best action to get it to the next level? So I call that our B2B, right? AI. And then we have a B2C, her cousin or sister technology, which is Customer 360. And if we have time, we may talk about that a little bit later.
Starting about the B2B AI, one answer that I was just missing in your explanation is, what can I do to not make it die? Does it answer that too?
Yeah, and that's so in our AI. So we filed our first patent in May 2020. So it's an international application to the United States Patent Office, and that patent is titled Predictive and Interventive Intelligence. So everybody's using AI to predict the future. So what we do is we use structured data and unstructured data to predict an event in the future will happen. So a sales of a high tech, let's say Dell is selling something to a major corporation, and there's an 85% chance that will happen. That's good to know, right? Now you know that. But what do you do with that information, right? So how do you bring that up to 92, 95%? How do you maximize that? And that's what we call intervention. And what that is next best actions in layman's terms. So if we take all of the structured and unstructured data out of, let's say, Salesforce for a division and model their customers, we can model their salespeople and their deals, and then a new deal comes in, it's interacting with what we call societal or situational data. And as it interacts, those things that interact with it are what the variables are that could increase that next best action. So for example, we can tell you, what percentage point will that increase the ability to win? So very dramatic things maybe change the salesperson, but it could be as small as send a follow-up email, bring in the CEO, share some client testimonials. So by doing this list in a prioritized way, that salesperson or sales team can increase not only the chances of it progressing to the next stage of the funnel, but also ultimately winning.
I especially like the idea that it can predict where in the process it's going to fail. I mean, you can just look at similar deals over time and say, okay, we've got, these are our odds. But knowing the odds and knowing where the process goes wrong are 2 very different things. So your ability to do that is, it's pretty cool. I'm not sure I've seen it all that many places before.
Well, thank you. Firstly, and it's very cool in that actually one of the sales for us selling is, let's say you're a VP of sales. We had one at a high tech company that sells routers and things of that nature, and he said, "Sev, if you can just tell me what deals not to pursue, that would make my life a whole lot easier." Right? Because our sales force, we have to compete because let's say it's an RFP. We have to compete. We know we're just going to be the price we're just there for price for the incumbent or whatnot. But if you can tell us mathematically that there is a 19% chance, and the only thing you can do are two things, and it only gets me up to a 25% chance, I'm going to take my salesperson off this and put them onto something that has a higher probability of winning.
Right. So let the junior person chase it for training, maybe.
Exactly. Like, why put our best guy there on something that's it's a dog? It's going to lose. Let's spend our time better on deals that we know are going to have a higher chance of winning. So,
or get some from the telesales team to do their job.
Or the other thing is in the RFP teams, right? Like, some of these large organizations have RFP teams, have all the documents, 90% of the documents besides the 10% that they want to see. Well, what do we need to do there to win? And the RFP is actually, it's the same technology, but it's applied a little bit differently. There was a company that we're speaking to now, same company, high tech on the West Coast, that they, a 1% increase in their sales with an RFP would be $800 million, right? This is not a small
that's
thing.
Nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, and from our customers so far, we have 5 of them for this technology. They're seeing between a 12 and 15% boost in their sales year over year and quarter over quarter after using this technology.
Yeah. In how far, apart from this highly interesting feature that predicts where in the process the opportunity will fail or is likely to fail, in how far would you say is what you are offering different to what Salesforce or SAP or Oracle offers in themselves? They all have a kind of an opportunity scoring that is, let's say, sort of AI based. Or AI based. No, let's be fair. It's AI based as well.
Yeah, we'll be kind and say that. And
always need to be kind.
So I think we need to recognize the white gorilla in the room, right? Like a Salesforce.com.
Yeah.
They truly transformed the industry of sales, right? It was salespeople with books of businesses and Rolodexes and Palm Pilots, and then I know back in the day, right? And then Salesforce came in and gave that opportunity to be on a cloud platform. It was reasonably priced, but right now, my personal opinion is that these large CRMs are basically fancy databases with fancy visualizations, and that's a strong opinion. It's my opinion, but the next step that has to be done is how are you going to decrease your sales times? How are you going to increase your sales outputs? How are you going to increase your revenue? And I believe that is around artificial intelligence. Now, Salesforce in the Dreamforce, I think it was 17 or 18, came out and said Einstein will do this. And Salesforce usually comes out and says, hey, we're going to do this, and they do it. I think what the challenge is, and I know this, is Einstein is struggling from going from predicting if a deal will go from stage 2 to 3, and they're stuck in that, where we can predict stages and then end result and then why. And the scoring, I think you bring that up, and SAP and your friend and my friend Esteban over there, that there are some challenges where you're looking at scoring. I think is really more advanced analytics, and you're looking to I have to go this way. You're going to look to the past, right? And you're using large data sets, slicing and dicing it, and then when a new data set comes in, you're like, oh, that matches this, right? So it's a 79%. And that is fantastic. And I think basic analytics or advanced analytics are one step. But the next step is, well, how do I predict? Give me a probability that in the future this will happen. They're scoring in real time where we're saying this deal that just came in has a probability of getting to the letter of intent with an 85%. But getting to the proposal stage only has a 33%, and final win is only a 3%. And I think the difference there is two. One is the prediction, and the second one is the intervention. What do I do once I have that information to actually operationalize that?
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that was a long-winded way of responding.
What you're basically saying is it's using far more data, different data, and with that is a bit more accurate.
Yeah, well, I think it's a number of things. Like our models, people are like, what is AI, right? And our models are systems of data science tools and algorithms that are acting as a brain. Some may call them a neural net, but that just is exclusively for machine learning. But anyways, that digital brain that's actually learning at the same time that is making predictions. So if someone says, I don't want to send that email to the CEO or CC'd to the CEO, they make that mistake or whatnot, or they enter it into the comments, that learns from that. The second thing is when you use this data, so if you're using Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics and you export your data, what you get is usually an Excel or a CSV file, and the data there is limited. One of the important things in our patent that we didn't think was valuable at all when we did this is the back-end API vacuum that sucks this data out. And it sucks off all the unstructured data. So besides, anything with a header, free text notes, emails, Word documents, PDFs, it sucks all of that information out, and then it has a larger data set to work with. And the gold really is in the unstructured data.
Yeah, that's something that I think people don't consider enough, is how much of the important stuff is in the unstructured data.
Yeah,
it's how we communicate. Everything that goes on in a deal, except writing down facts and figures, is unstructured, and it's a difficult thing for machines to do.
It's difficult for most teams to do. Like we are really good. We became really good at this with medical, right? And going through medical notes and whatnot. And we just got good at it. And we didn't expect that we were that good, but it turns out we are. But it's the nuances, Marshall, that you bring up, right? Like, let's say the CEO declines a meeting 3 times in a row, and it's an hour meeting, and then accepts a 15-minute meeting. Or it's the dialogue between the product person and the salesperson on the selling company that's having this conversation about, will the environment work? There's not only the structured the data that we harvest, the words and whatnot, but there's also the sentiment, right? Like, how's that conversation going? If you send an email and saying, we'd really look to a VP, we'd really like to get in front of you to talk about our new product. And the response is, I don't have time for this because of quarter close. Please reach back out to my assistant, blah, blah, blah. That's very powerful. I don't have time. But in context, that negative is also a positive, because reach out after quarter close. So it's being able to digest to that level the utilization of that information. So,
what do you think made the software so surprisingly good?
Yeah,
you said you were surprised yourself, right?
Well, we were like, we didn't. So, I always am pretty. I'm probably the worst salesperson in the world, because I'm pretty blunt and honest. And we can say our accuracy for different clients is different, right? Yeah. And our low accuracy is 75%. So I think that's decent, but it goes up to about 92%. If it gets too high, then you've got to start thinking, is there overfitting? Nothing's perfect, right? And so I gauge to be in the 80% to 90%. That's where we're really good. We were surprised. Well, number one, we were surprised about the back-end tool, how important that was, right? We just thought it was an infrastructure or whatnot, but that is a really important part, not only of the patent, but also of getting the right information to actually apply the technology. And on the other side, it was a lot of trial and error to get the right pieces of information together with the right data science tool to get a functional output, right? That could give a directionality. And it was over a year of R&D that we were doing this. And it's the other thing that's important to understand is, not a whole lot of people can develop this, right? So it's either some, unicorn or wannabe unicorn like myself that is developing this. But the sales data, when we were creating this, I figured, I could just go buy the data. Not the case. Companies' sales data is sacrosanct, right? They're never going to release this data. So you have two options, or three options. Someone like myself, someone that is a large Fortune 500 team that has the talent to do this, but it's not their core business, or the Salesforces, the Microsofts, the Sugar CRMs that would be doing this, because they would have access to the data. And that's why it was so surprising that it came out that well. So we borrowed with CEOs to let us have their data. We started with 3 companies and we went up to 4. Now we're up to 5, and we've got a couple more in the pipeline. So it's growing, and the accuracy grows as well.
Maybe a stupid question, but what's the impact of the training set?
Well, it's powerful, right? And that's, that brings up a really good point, Thomas. And I'll bring up why training sets are really important. And Amazon developed a hiring algorithm, and they wanted to hire the best programmers or whatnot. But they also needed to be compliant with California law, right? And equal employment opportunity. So they mathematically modeled their top data engineers, data architects, blah, blah, blah. What did they get out? They got the best Southeast Asian data architects, because the training set wasn't deep enough in women. It wasn't deep enough in other diverse ethnicities or whatnot to actually capture those individuals. And I use that as an example of why is the training set so important, and why is it integral to make sure that you're doing that right. Now, the second one is that when we have a client, we use their data set, their historical data to do the training, because it's very specific to them. The only time that we could use it the same as if they're in the same industry, or maybe it's a multinational company where they have different divisions, if you will. And so you do have to look out there. If the company is too small, is there biased, right? What is that variation on the other side of it that is right? And not all companies have the data size or the data to be able to apply this. If you're a 10-person company and you're using Pipedrive, this probably isn't the right tool. But then the question comes up, could Pipedrive or HubSpot use this technology for all companies under 50 people? They have some type of subscription service where all the data for all those companies come in, and you're kind of grouping that data. And we haven't tried that yet, but in our medical AI, the smaller Blue Cross Blue Shields, there's an opportunity to use their data, let's say from the state of Connecticut or the state of Arizona, that are smaller than California or Texas, to combine that power so their N is large enough.
How to avoid this bias then? Because ultimately you don't know that you have one, right?
No, you don't. And it's in the implementation, right? Like if you are biased there, well, number one is that do you have a large enough data set, right? And there are mathematical ways to determine that. And if you don't have that, then you need to figure out how do you boost your N. Do you buy data? Do you use other data sources? And do you see an overfitting, right? Like that 99% or 98%, those are triggers and red flags that you have a bias in your.
Okay.
And then also your clients also probably, when we're saying it's going to win and then they lose, 9 out of 10 times, that's your proof in the pudding that it didn't do a good job.
Which basically leads into a related one. So you don't know about your bias. You probably don't know how to select the right data set. That basically means that there are some preconditions to be met to be AI ready as a company. So what are some of these?
Yeah, so, and that's an interesting one. And we had a conversation, I think yesterday or last week, about a client that wasn't ready, right? And it wasn't because they didn't have the data set. I'm a big believer of crawling before you walk and then walk before you run. And you need to have the infrastructure in place, right? So you need to have a data lake or data pond, and then it's ideal to be in the cloud, right? But there's other things, something that you may have seen me speak about is data lifecycle value chain. right? And so again, this is over years of thinking through this, and you say it sounds very reasonable and like very basic, but most companies haven't thought through this, where you have your data acquisition, you have your data validation, your data storage, your visualization, your basic analytics, your advanced analytics, and then finally AI. And that whole process, that chain, has to be in control. And when I say control, like scientific control, for you to get the most value out of it. So if you're at hey, I'm validating the quality of my data, you're not ready for the basic analytics and the advanced analytics. And companies should spend their money on those stages, right? Because there is value to that, right? Like it'll get you 10%, and then the advanced will get you maybe 25%. And then you can go into AI. But if clients say, well, I want to do that now because it's sexy and fun. And, we usually say, it's not my core business. You should really focus on X, Y, and Z. But if you're really determined to have AI because my CEO says I need to have AI, we can run in parallel and spin up a small environment in AWS. But I'm a big believer about, crawling before you walk and walking before you run, right? Like, put the money there and get your value out, and then step to the next stage.
What do you do then with a customer that is at the crawling stage, or probably not yet at the crawling stage, just lying flat on their belly or their back?
Yeah, well, you give them good advice as to, I call it the triangle. So, there is a systems integrator, there is a platform, and then there is AI, right? And that AI might come from the platform or the systems integrator, or could be someone like us. And, when we're talking about CRM platforms, right, like the big ones such as SAP, Salesforce, or Microsoft Dynamics, they already have the platform. So you have a platform. And most of the time, you probably already have a systems integrator that's worked with you. So if you have that information in Salesforce, all it is sucking the information out, goes into the AI, and then the systems integrator can either pipe it back into the Salesforce Marketing Cloud, or maybe it goes into their Azure or AWS or Teradata platform, right? So I think if you're at that stage and you've already bought an enterprise license to Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce or Sugar CRM, you've already gotten to that point, right? Because you are utilizing visualizations. The data is stored in a systematic way in the CRM. But if you're looking more at the customer 360, which is much more nuanced, then you need to have your data in one source of truth, right? Like you need to port it into a Microsoft Azure or Teradata Vantage, and Teradata, plug for Teradata. Teradata is, making some major changes in their infrastructure, right? They were a data company, and now they're coming back pretty strong because they have to for survival. And they're doing some things in database that Azure and AWS can't. So,
and elaborate on that. What do they do that Azure and AWS can't?
Well, they have, they were from the 90s. They were being used as that data storage, right? And now they have brought in Teradata Vantage, which is their platform. So, for instance, we can run the CRM AI or the medical in database, right? So let's say you have 80,000 records, and each of those records has 15 to 20 data fields, structured and unstructured. And now when you release the algorithm, right, like normally with it in the analytics and your scoring, what they will do is they'll subsample that 80,000. Maybe they do 2,000, maybe they do 8,000. With Teradata Vantage, you can actually in database process that 80,000 records with 15 or 20 variables or attributes within seconds, if not a minute, right? And you're done. There's no more sampling. The power in database is unbelievable. And that's the power of Teradata, and that's their dark horse competition, I think, with AWS and Microsoft. And Google Cloud, though, I'm really impressed with Google Cloud and their SQL capabilities in terms of recall and bringing up the data in terms of speed. I've been really, really impressed. And we are partnering with them in Latin America, but also in the medical. So there are really powerful players. And then you have I'm a big believer in Azure. Azure is, you can't go wrong with Azure, right? It's stable, it's good, it's going to be around for a long time, has great tools. So
that's why I was just wondering a little. I mean, Teradata was one thing. They are known. I mean, they are doing data warehousing since, well, forever, basically.
Centuries.
So right. So Azure or Microsoft as such, they are not doing it that long, but they are very strong in that as well. They have the technologies, same as Oracle, for example, or SAP with their HANA database. So that's why I was a bit surprised about the strength or the differentiator that the Teradata seems to show.
Well, I mean, again, but they had to, right? They had to make this decision to go, cloud and in database, right? Because if not, they were going to, everybody's moving their data to Azure, or they're moving it to AWS Cloud or GCP. So they had to do this. I like to call these things evolutionary events. So like extinction or continue with business. So, and I think it was a really good.
It was clearly the old story that they had the combination of legacy-driven database technology combined with high-speed iron. Yeah. The NCR Teradata monster machines plus their logic in the databases were the kick which they gave into the asses of the competition. Now they have to sort it in a way that they can implement their brains in form of software into everybody's storage, and everybody's machine. And knowing that, the next step is you were talking about these friendly people which are around in the market. Whom else do you see who is trying to compete with you and loves to crawl a bit nearer your capabilities?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when we go to the investors, they love this slide, right? They love like, well, who's your competition? And
they all want to see it, right?
they all do. Like, and we've analyzed this down to the T, right? And like, there are different levels. So I think the first one is like, who's playing in artificial intelligence, right? And there's 4 categories. There's the platform companies, so Microsoft, Google, Teradata, AWS. And I would argue that they don't actually have AI. I would argue that they have a machine learning library that's part of their platform. And it's really fantastic. And it's really good, and we're interoperable with those. But the reason that they want DeLorean's AI living in their environment house and using their machine learning library is we drive consumption, right? And we're good. So like we're 2 sides of it, right? That triangle, like we need the platform. My AI needs to live in the house, and the house could be Microsoft or AWS or Teradata or GCP. Then you have the consulting companies who I get a kick out of, like McKinsey or EY or whatnot, and they're really good at consulting and telling you what you should be doing on your value proposition, but they don't have the technical chops to actually implement what they're advising, right? And that comes into where the systems integrators, so Capgemini, Cognizant, Wipro, Tata, Infosys, I mean, we can name them all. NTT Data is I'm very fascinated by these guys. NTT Data is bringing a lot of money into the United States, or investing heavily, and they really are active in artificial intelligence. And their customers only have good things to say about them. Now, if you ever work for a systems integrator, that's usually not the case, right? Because someone in the organization usually hates you. So, it's a systems integrator, right? You can't make everybody happy. And what they have is they have an army of people that can do machine learning or sentiment analysis, but they can't put it together to get that ROI. And I think that's where we're different, is we kind of work with the different aspects of these players in AI, and you need them all, right? Like it's that triangle. You need a platform environment, you need a systems integrator, and then there's other unicorns or wannabe unicorns like myself. But the problem there, guys, is that they usually get acquired so fast. If they're doing well, one of these other larger companies kind of acquires them. Now, and that, I think that leads to less innovation, because once they get into the larger company, innovation is just kind of not part of the mothership. But in terms of our CRM AI, we have not seen a technology that compete. And I don't see us competing with any of the CRM platforms as Microsoft or Salesforce or Customer with a K or APN. Like, my job is not to compete. You are really good at you're really good at being a CRM. What I'm saying is that we sit on top of you and we make you better, right? We are that, vitamin shake that makes you a higher athlete.
So I would like to address it in some kind of the back to the future approach. You are the turbo-powered engine, which gives with the NOx trip fuel the extra power into a more or less intelligent system, and gives it a new blue or a new opportunity to deliver more benefits with your add-ons in highly sophisticated capabilities.
Yeah, I can't agree with that more. I would say that it's a flux capacitor, right? And that gives us the gigawatts to get to the next time period. But the power of our technology on top of Salesforce, or on top of pick the CRM, right? I mean, there's a lot of the Pega, SAP, Oracle, Zoho, Pipedrive. It's we're interactive, we're small. And
would you like to share with us that visualization so that we have it, let's say, in front of us?
Sure, I can bring that up, or do you have to activate that? Oh, there we go.
Magic.
Oops, I'm not sure what I did there.
That's cool. Because
so,
I'm very the visual type, such as that picture helps me to align in the certain areas.
Well, and I think, Ralph, like, what we're talking about is, they're all good companies and they're doing fantastic work, right? But we've gotten to that wall that I think we're hitting. Like, what's next, right? Like, when you go into that quarterly review with the client, like, what are you going to do? Like, how do we increase the win-loss? How do we increase progressive drivers or deal conversion or automate sales operations? And that's where AI comes in. And I think there's been a lot of promises made at Dreamforce or with the Marketing Cloud at Salesforce and Pega and things of that nature. And we just haven't hit it, right? And what I see the future look like is the taking the power of these major organizations, and then DeLorean CRM sits on top, and it kind of amplifies, right? It amplifies their signal with different types of outputs, increasing the percentage of sales. I mean, what salesperson or VP or COO is going to say, I don't want more revenue? The number of deals, the number of deals that are going to win, right? There's a bell curve. And pushing that bell curve to the right, to the more deals that are winnable with the right salesperson, is going to drive that. And that just drives your ROI and your winnability, but also, like we talked about earlier, decreasing your sales cycle time and your sales ops costs, right? I think that's a huge area. And then the important thing here is also visualizing this, for the executive. Like, we're not talking about, we're not talking about forecasting what your quarter is going to be. We have a mathematical equation that's going to tell you, like, hey, my revenue for this quarter is $1 million or $1 billion. And I know what my loss is going to be statistically and where they come from, right? So yes.
Let me just yank your chain a little. So that's in a kind of a friendly way. So when I go out, buy a piece of software, what I get is a promise. So there may or may not be 25% of a revenue increase or a sales increase after. So how do you convince them? I mean, it comes only after the fact, right?
Yeah, no, it does. But the first thing I say is like, how much are you spending on your CRM, right? It's, on the low ends, it's tens of thousands. But if you're a Fortune 500, you're in the millions of dollars. So why not spend, like you bought the Ferrari, right? You bought it, you want to drive it. Hopefully it goes 90 miles an hour, in 0 to 60. But don't you want to drive it on a road? And this is buying the small patch of road to buy it on. And it's cost effective. But what we do, Thomas, to meet that is we talk to the client and we say, we are willing to implement, let's say, in the geographic area of New England, and we'll show you the results. And if you like the results, we will scale, US, global, or whatever that is. And then as your users go up, the number of people that come online, that's how we make our money, right? So we've got skin in the game.
So you are not a Land Rover. You are more for the Ferrari type, because it needs a certain infrastructure for a DeLorean to get, let's say, the track on the highway, and it's not made for a stock on highway, such as hole to hole is not fun. So what do you suggest one should have as a core infrastructure to make that baby run into the right direction and that he has the benefit? What amount of data is welcomed?
Well, I'd argue we're more of a Corvette, American made, as fast as a Ferrari, but not as expensive. So, but yeah, like what you need basically is, do you have a major CRM? Salesforce, Pega, Spot. Once you have that, all you really need for us to do is that we have a cloud or an infrastructure, or maybe even a database. I mean, we can even do it on MongoDB. But for you to get the value out, you probably need 5,000 deals in the, over the last 2 years, right? And once you have that, then we can start modeling. Now, obviously,
that's cool.
If you have 100,000 deals, it's just going to get better and better. So, like I said, that if you are a 10-person shop using Pipedrive, this probably won't be the best solution, unless but if HubSpot says, I really, there's an opportunity for our smaller customers if we anonymize their data, and then they maybe pay a subscription rate. That's the only way I would see that going there.
This raises a question for me, if you don't mind me breaking in there, Thomas.
Fully, of course I do mind.
Oh, all right. Well,
you're always too smart for me.
We've mentioned working with established CRMs Salesforce. Salesforce, as we know, has Einstein, and they've tried to make Einstein a deep part of the platform. There are other vendors. Zoho has Zia.
SAP
all the other ones.
Microsoft has Cortana.
Thank you, Cortana. I never played Halo, so I always forget Cortana. The overall question I'm wondering is, what happens when you have something like Einstein that is deeply integrated into Salesforce, and you try and lay DeLorean on top of it? Do you get the clash of AIs? Do you get T800 versus the T1000? What happens?
They have the digital battle in the fiber optic. So we have gone up against Salesforce, and we've been successful in bidding in what the results would be, and so we're proud of that, right? Like we're little guy up against Goliath. I mean, I think quite frankly, and I know this because I've spoken to executives at Salesforce, is that they're just not there, right? And we speak to a lot of clients that they're buying Marketing Cloud, but they're not getting the full value out of it, and so that's where they're coming to a secondary supplier like ourselves. And what we do is that we operate within their system. So once we've got the go ahead, we're just extracting the data out of whatever the CRM is, and then piping it back into their visualizations. So it doesn't. It's not like when we pipe in that Einstein sends digital knives at us or whatnot. But it is confusing to the customer why Einstein is not working, and then why are we working? And so you have to.
Well, this is from our expertise not such a surprise. But
Yeah.
I'm the bad boy here in the gang, and I love to get that large stick and hit on the blue cloud once in a while, because aside of vapor marketing, I want to see hard facts. And a customer who is paying for a user $350 per month per user to get something out and is not getting it is not to be, let's say, a fantastic referential site. Yeah.
And Ralph, you're right. I mean, we are seeing right now. That there is customers who have bought Marketing Cloud or bought Einstein who are now turning off that service because it hasn't actually delivered what they said they were going to deliver. And so there's that secondary market that we're trying to come in behind and actually capture. But it's not only Einstein, it's the actual, like, they buy the Marketing Cloud, and there's a higher rate of this in Latin America than there is in the US, but they're not getting the value for their dollar, right? And when the renewal comes up, they're not renewing. So
okay. Do you observe, aside of that we mentioned the Blue Cloud colleagues, are there others which have a similar impact if they work together with your technology, that there is a lot more sexiness coming out, or more precision, to put it in that aspect?
So what we usually get is that we get from Pega or whoever is that, oh, we have that. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's good. And I don't push the envelope, but then I'll talk to a friend of ours that will say they don't have it, and they don't want to do that. I think Microsoft is in a reorganization phase, right? Kind of like figuring out what they want to do there. And I've been speaking to friends of ours at SAP, and they know they need to do that. But it seems like all of these companies are in some type of leadership opportunity for improvement or change from 2020 to 2021, and that there are a lot of these check marks to actually add this in 2022. So I guess we'll see where that goes. We would love to partner, and we'd love to do this more, go to market with them, and we're going to market individually with systems integrators. So we go with the systems integrator because they'll have a Salesforce practice, they'll have a Pega practice, and for them it's another add-on sale, right? So for them it's a good thing, and they get the consulting work. But it'd be really cool for one of the. I think it's hard to admit that we don't have what we said we were going to have 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like skepticism is still the healthy way to look at it. I mean, we have been told that AI can do a lot of amazing things, and it can, but there are still things it struggles with. You can predict the outcome of a deal very well, but AI still can't look at a bunch of pictures and say which one is a bird. It's why we have CAPTCHA.
Yeah, I mean that's that's a good, again, that goes back to the training set, right? And there's been some really great things happening. I mean, the power. I mean, think about Microsoft. If they can get teams to work consistently, and then they have the chat during the video conference, you have audio, you have text that could add on to all of this, their Dynamics 365. I mean, that's, why did Salesforce buy, was it Slack, right? Like, so, I mean, now you would have all those conversations of the team or in the promos, all of that information that we're talking about earlier, unstructured, could be brought into the analysis. And that's powerful, right? Like if you're talking to a client on Teams and this is all being recorded, or it's just you've got facial recognition, you've got sentiment of the voices, you have sentiment of the words that could be analyzed, like, okay, what is that C-level thinking? It's that's the future, right? And a company that thinks like that, if it's Microsoft or Salesforce that does that first, is going to be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, not just. I especially like the sentiment analysis possibility. Something we said much, at the top of the hour, talking about when an executive says, "I don't have time for this, but why don't you talk to my assistant and they'll set it up for you?" When you get that the first time, that tells you one thing. If they say the same thing to you 3 or 4 quarters in a row, that's telling you something very different.
Yes.
And if you can get that inference automatically instead of having to dope it out for yourself, there's power.
Well, there's a whole quarter or 2 quarters possibly of saving time, right? Like,
yeah.
What's the next thing down the list I need to do? Do we need to do a C-level to C-level outreach? Do we need to do an education day? It's the sentiment's pretty important, but also the frequency, right? Like, how many times did they decline your meeting? Did they cancel the meeting and then they rescheduled? Well, that's a good sign. But did they cancel or decline and then there's no words, there's no text involved. There's a lot to be understood by that. So
absolutely.
Picking up on something you said earlier. So you said something to the extent like you are pulling out the data of the system, munching it over in your system, and then sending it back, not bad.
Yeah. Sending it good.
Yeah.
Now there are a bunch of systems involved. There's a lot of data in transition involved. And earlier you said something like regulations in California, which was a different regulation. We didn't talk CCPA there, but now we have potentially a CCPA and a GDPR topic. How do you deal with that?
Well, we try to take the easiest way possible because we also deal with health data in one of our other technologies. So the easiest thing for us to do is that the data never leaves your system, right? We VPN in, we drop our model into your environment. There's a sandbox, it's tested, it's quarantined, it's sanitized, and then it goes live in your environment. We do really well, like I said, with Microsoft Azure, GCP, Teradata Vantage, and AWS. We have worked in terms of inside Salesforce as well. So the data never leaves. It's whatever that is. And some clients are a little bit higher up. So when we're doing it, they send us laptops for us to drop stuff in. And then again, you have to have that systems integrator, right? That you can have. We can make you great visualizations, but if it's not automatically updating to your CRM or whatnot, it doesn't really matter. So, and that's where these systems integrators love that, like, oh, this is another service I can do, and an opportunity for their portfolio. So, go into those clients who are disappointed in maybe Einstein saying, well, we have an AI that'll work for you.
Which brings me to the other topic that we didn't really elaborate on. So now you convinced the buying party that Delorean is it. With a capital I, probably also with a capital T on top. Yeah. So now you implement, the system gets implemented, the system gets rolled out, and then we have the second layer of trust that needs to get earned, which is the actual user. So they see a prediction, they don't know squat about what happened before, and they do know as much about how the system implemented it or developed this prediction, or even prescription if you are drastic. So how do you make them trusted? Because they are just, well, they see something that probably contradicts their gut feeling.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple replies to that. Like, I think that needs to be unpacked a little bit. So I think the sales management have a gut instinct that they know this is there, right? Like but they've never had direct line of sight. So at the basic level, we are giving them direct live line of sight into this, where they're saying, well, this is our top 10 deals and this is our bottom 5 deals. Everybody also knows the sandbaggers in the group, right? Oh, it's going to win. It's going to win. There are salespeople that are sandbagging. This is going to flesh those out pretty quickly, right? Your top 5%, your true standard deviations of the mean above salespeople, this may not work for them, right? Like they're going to be good no matter what, and they're going to bring home those dollars. And then the 2 standard deviations below, there's a crap load of opportunity for improvement. The sales management already knows who those people are. So like when they're making recommendations, that those are the people that probably need to spend the most time. But it's the bell in between where there's the volume and the opportunity. And I think you're right, Thomas, is that, over the period of time that I've been in AI, back in 14 or 15, I was just giving great technology and maybe not giving it that gift wrapping or that packaging. And there has to be good change management. There has to be good training. There has to be good feedback, right? And there is feedback. So when we showed you earlier how the executives would digest it, that was mocked up to be a Salesforce. So when we do the visualizations, we want it in a way that they will easily consume that. So that's the first thing. And then we also engage them in the process on how they're going to utilize this, right? And that's usually with the systems integrator. And it's very important because we have another client that is with a customer 360 where they probably have the largest sales force in the world. And they, in Latin America, they're touching over 2 million points of sale every day. And how do we get them to trust us with what we're telling them to put there? And that was a journey for us as well. And so we finally came to a conclusion where it's more dip your toe in. So, okay, I'm going to trust it a little bit, but like you said, my gut says, so I'm only going to do 1 or 2 of these things, right? And you start with the supervisor who knows the salespeople and knows where improvement needs to be and identifies those people maybe as the guinea pigs. And as they build trust in it, then we move into a supervisor and then salesperson working together on it. And as that trust builds over, let's say, a period of 6 months, then the person's starting like, yes, you're right? I should do that. But with the CRM AI, some of the things we're asking for aren't, controversial, right? It's like send a follow-up email to the assistant, right? To get a time on it. I mean, you've got to be a moron not to do that. There needs to be an education day. There needs to be, a C2C outreach, right? Like those are not like, you're like, oh my God, the oh my God is maybe we change the sales team or this deal needs to go to, and identifies that agent, right? That's a drastic one. But, on those deals that you were saying earlier with Marshall and Ralph, is that those ones that we're going to predict are going to fail, then why don't we let the younger guy, the junior folks or the telemarketers follow that up? We have one client that's in the medical device industry, and maybe medical durables is a better word for it. And Johnson & Johnson has the lion's share of this business. So there's opportunity with another person coming in. They're backed by a private equity firm. And so they just want this to just kind of give a guidance to their salespeople as to they're new to this. They want to see what's going on, what didn't work. But it also holds these individuals accountable. And that's one of the reasons I think that they're adopting it.
What do you think does it take to have an actual user, means a sales rep, not a sales manager, a sales rep, and then have them talk about, increase the speed of them trusting the system?
Yeah, well, it depends on how much, again, we have a training portfolio that goes around this. And, when we deploy, we are looking at these numbers every day or weekly or whatnot and saying, hey, this person needs to be doing X, Y, and Z, and then refreshing and giving them that training that trust it, right? Like this is going to go forward, like you're in a position where you're not making the sale. So what else are you going to, again, it's like any new technology, right? Same thing with, I'm sure the person that had a book of business that had to first digitally put this into some CRM. So
Jeff just made an interesting comment, because that goes into the line of the bell curve, right? So it might not be a bell curve, but just assuming it is, there always is a number of people who think, well, including us, who think they are smarter than they are.
Yes.
And those are the ones who say the system is BSing me. And these are the ones who need to get convinced.
Well, no, and you have to sell it, right? I mean, this has to be, and we've approached that with other ones, is that we have to build that trust, and it is a dip the toe. But if you do a pilot and you're successful there, that allows those salespeople to have as they say in Spanish, a medal on your chest, so that they can actually use them as the focal point when you scale to your next region or product, if you will.
Yeah. Totally unrelated question, because as usual, tempus fugit, as the Latin guy in me says. How much time do you have?
Oh, I have a little bit more time. Yes.
That's good, because well, we have eaten our hour.
I didn't even notice that. So
Shoot right through it.
And you see that our promise that you will not have trouble to talk through the fascinating topics at least an hour.
Yeah.
Thomas pointed out, because I'm always the guy with the fancy hat and waving with the friendly lady who is talking about the jurisdiction, you know, Mrs. Law.
We need to get him a hat.
Wie heißt die gute Fee? Justitia.
Justitia.
Yeah.
And it's a scale.
Yeah, the scale she is utilizing and weighing the certain importance of things, such as data privacy, GDPR compliance versus I get more data in my system. Pumping data into systems is one. Being allowed to do so is another. And I feel a bit uncomfortable. Yeah, if this is without control. Yeah. So, what do you advise the organizations which are desperately trying to get more data into their systems, as they probably do not have enough?
So I think so. The first one is in the CRM systems, right? Like, you own that data. The salesperson works for you. You own the emails. You own the letter of intent. For the CRM AI, this is an easy question, because you already own the data, right? You own the emails. You own everything that they're inputting. In terms of the salesperson, one tip that we have for salespeople is, instead of having to sit at Panera Bread and typing out your notes, is use your dictation on your phone, send yourself an email with the notes, and it goes in automatically. Now, with some of our clients, they want to bring in tertiary data sets. We have a high-tech one that has like an RFP playbook that you can think of, any type of RFP. That's it. They own that. That can be brought in. I'm not a big believer in buying data sets, because I think a lot of them that you can actually harvest freely, that is available. But there are very special sales data or data that you should buy. IRI and Nielsen are 6 weeks late. I think they're just too old. And then I do think that, so I'm a big believer in data privacy. I think that people own their data. I'm not sure if you've had or know Richie Ederu with humanity.co. People should have the opportunity to opt in and opt out of what data they have, what data they don't have. You're seeing Google Analytics like allow, disallow. But if you do allow it, then you've chosen to do that. With humanity.co, there might be like opportunities for you to be, I only want it for nonprofit studies, or I don't want it to be used in marketing. So I do believe in that. But I think the pendulum has swung, and no offense to my European friends, I think that the regulations that they're hauling out, that the president of the EU put out about a month ago, are being done by people who don't understand the technology. And that's always dangerous. And we're seeing a similar issue in the United States with the FDA in terms of drugs and whatnot in development with AI, is that you have people that don't understand the technology who are writing these laws and or regulations. And I think that's always dangerous. And I think politicians want to actually do this faster than letting it evolve naturally. I'm a big believer that, a lot of us are AI scientists, and we've been raised or gone through a PhD, and we have a set of ethics, we have a set of protocols we go through, that we should be allowed to be self-governed up to the point that, that it needs to. And I think politicians, you hear this AI ethics, and you hear it's a fear mongering, right? Like you see all these people writing about AI ethics, and you're wondering like what their background is, and ethics for one person may be ethics for another, and I think it's dangerous. And I'm in the minority there, and I understand that. I am a big believer in letting scientists be scientists, but the Cambridge issue with Facebook really did us a disservice, and when people didn't realize they were getting their data used and it was being sold, right? And that wasn't told to them. If people know, then all's fair game. And I know we're approaching the time, so Lady Law, I'd love to get to meet you and we can talk and maybe go on a date and I can discuss my views of AI with you.
She has a sword in her other hand, right?
I like them when they're a little bit aggressive. So
yeah, and she's got that blindfold.
Yeah. Well,
kinky.
That can be dangerous. Hit me with your rhythm stick. Hit me. Yeah?
Hit me with your best shot.
I'm jury on the blockhead. Sometimes I have the impression that the GDPR managing, let's say, influencers are a bit like blockheads. They need to be open to the benefit of the users in a certain degree and make things work, such as in the pandemic part, that we had real trouble to get the kids educated in school with all the means and all the technology we have behind, but it was a bit tricky to get and to ramp up the correct privacy level. And what we see right now is, which is not a danger for your approach for artificial intelligence, but if you leave too much doors open, some unfriendly people come in and try to collect. Yeah, it's called ransomware, and we do have exactly in the United States one company which is giving us a load of trouble worldwide now. Kaseya.
Yeah. No, again, a few bad apples are causing a whole lot of issues otherwise.
Some stupid idiots can ruin all the positive aspects of AI, yeah, and it's more than morons. That are really those guys, for instance, if the face recognition is too stupid to read my face properly and I don't get my money, wait till I come along and say, what do you say? User error, and my pump gun is empty. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your time. I loved the discussion, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Yeah.
Same here. I hope we can do this again.
Well, I'd love to, Marshall. Ralph, always great. And Thomas, thank you so much. And we will continue our discussion in AI in the near future.
Oh, I'm pretty sure about that because it's one of the hottest topics around.
And Severance, it was a pleasure having you here. And I enjoyed very much together with the gang that we had such a vivid exchange of ideas and positions and thoughts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Agreed. And I think we need more of this, right, for the industry.
Yeah, we do. Thanks
guys.
Thanks to the audience. So we are going offline now. No need to leave the studio for you or anybody of us. The rest, see you next time.
Just
Stay